Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about combat metas, and it's a subject I'm sure is going to attract a lot of flack over the course of the next few days, but I still feel it's worth discussing anyway. Since the dawn of modern gaming, combat in games is centered around builds and who has the best items and highest tier skills and other such business. And in a game like Elite, it often comes down to numbers. Who has more of this or more of that, who shoots first and who spends more time on target. While all these variables should influence the outcome of any one individual battle, one thing I believe should always take paramount is a player's skill with their own particular build. Now don't misunderstand me. There are some builds out there that are just absolutely bonkers and shouldn't be effective, but a combat build that's well thought out should always be viable in a game. And with the current state of things in Elite, there are, for the most part, only a very small number of builds that are, in practice, truly effective. And there's one person that I have met in this game so far as a friend of mine who has been able to successfully avoid meta slaving. And he pilots a cutter that has fared quite well against all metas that have come out to date. His particular build is able to withstand sustained attack from multiple sources and force them all to withdraw, all without ever using a meta build. This is something of a unique case though. Most players in Elite, to be completely frank, are not overly adept at making the most of their original build ideas, and this is where knowledge of the game and intimate knowledge of the ship you're flying and its strengths and weaknesses, and building an effective tactic around those strengths and weaknesses takes paramount. Meta builds are born from that very same process, but what turns it into a meta is when that very same build is applied to ships that it was never designed for, and turns out to be relatively effective. While this means it's a very well done build, it also means that diversity suffers as a whole, ultimately limiting the experience of the game, and limiting PvP encounters particularly to a who fired first and who has better luck with our engineers type situation. And to me personally, that seems like a bit of a shame. The potential for inventive and diverse builds in Elite is absolutely immense, but the notion of end-all metas keeps that type of gameplay from becoming an actual reality. And to make things more frustrating, for me in particular, the meta shifts on every particular update, which forces people to feel the need to constantly chase after it, which to me creates a sense of never-ending grinding and drudgery, which is something that we should avoid if we can. It needs to be fun and not being, not constantly chasing after, the pinnacle of PvP greatness. Which brings me to kind of my next topic, which is power play modules. The concept of power play modules isn't exactly a new one, but what is new is the dumbfire missile that's on offer from Yuri Grom. With this missile just about to hit the hands of players and the effects of this particular weapon being what they are, it could be game-breaking in many different ways, especially in player versus player combat. And to be completely honest, I'm not convinced that Frontier has truly thought this one out properly. For those of you who don't know what it's supposed to do, the missile is supposed to reboot the frameshift drive of any ship it strikes. And while it sounds rather innocuous at first, it only takes a moment to realize the effects that something like that could have on PvP in the game as a whole. Being unable to run from a player encounter is going to make for a less than stellar experience in open play, particularly in PvP encounters. Which kind of brings me to my next little topic, which is open play itself. And I'm only going to touch on this a little bit because it deserves its entire video all to itself. But love it, hate it, or love to hate it, open play is the only place that we can go to meet random players and experience truly emergent gameplay. However, it's not exactly a place that's friendly for new players or those that don't really have a whole lot of time on their hands to invest in engineers and grinding and a lot of the things that comes with being competitive. So that sadly drives a lot of people into solo and private group where they can control the types of encounters they have. And the addition of Yuri Grom's murder missile, as I'm calling it, adds to the extensive list of reasons for people to avoid open play, at least for a pretty sizable chunk of Elite's player base. You only have to look at the sheer size of Mobius's private group, to realize that it is a problem. that's a little bit of a discussion for another video. But I will be watching for tests and reports of the performance on Urigrom's module, and I'm going to hope that it works out favorably. And there's also an entire host of balancing changes coming out to engineer mods, weapons, and just combat all around. And some of these changes I'm not exactly the biggest fan of, and others look downright fantastic. The balance changes that Frontier is looking at doing, they're not minor, so I'm going to encourage each of you to take a look at them and give Frontier your feedback and thoughts before these changes make it to beta testing later on, and I'm going to put links to those threads in the video description down below. And as I said, there is going to be a beta iteration on this coming up, and I am going to be taking part in that just to see what's going on and give you guys my thoughts on that whenever it does hit the beta servers. Anyway guys, that's all for today. I'll see y'all next time.